And, you know, everyone's private life has painful, difficult, challenging moments, and we all make mistakes. And we learn from those mistakes. We shouldn't be castigated for the mistakes that we make because they are part of our learning.
Each day I bring you a new story about Hollywood's golden age and the stars who defined it. If you enjoy these videos, a subscribe, like, or comment would mean a great deal. It costs nothing, but the support matters. Thank you for watching. Let's get into the story. Do you really know who Disney's real girl next door was? Back in the 1960s, she wasn't just another actress. She was Disney's golden light, the smiling face of Pollyanna and the Parent Trap, a teen star with that classic charm everyone adored. Her name? Hayley Mills. She stepped into Hollywood with a glow that screamed success. But behind that sparkle, her life took some shocking turns no one saw coming. As the cameras faded, so did her luck. Hayley lost nearly every penny she'd earned as a child star. Can you imagine? All those years of fame, gone in an instant. Then came a marriage that stunned everyone. She tied the knot with a man 33 years older. What started as romance soon turned into control, and after that, she fell into a string of emotional roller coasters that left deep scars. The world saw Disney's sweet darling, but behind that image was a woman quietly battling heartbreak and disappointment for decades. Born Hayley Catherine Rose. Vivian Mills on April 18th, 1946 in London. She came from what many called the royalty of British theater. Her dad, Sir John Mills, was a big screen legend, known for Great Expectations and Ryan's Daughter. Her mom, Mary Haley Bell, wrote plays and novels, while her sister, Juliet Mills, also caught the acting bug. Art wasn't just in their blood. It was their whole world.
He was a darling. He was a real darling. He was a tough businessman, but he was very warm, very real, very genuine. He loved children. He was a good listener.
Hayley's childhood was a wild mix of comfort and control. At home on the family's vibrant farm, she was free, running barefoot through fields, watching her parents turn ideas into art, and finding her passion for performing. But at boarding school, things changed fast. The freedom vanished, replaced by strict rules and cold walls that made her sensitive heart shrink. In her memoir, Forever Young, Hayley revealed something truly haunting. She wrote about how a priest at that school once tried to take advantage of her, offering her a role in the school play in exchange for something no child should ever face. That moment shattered her innocence forever. That single experience was enough for a 12-year-old Hayley to realize something heartbreaking. Not everyone who smiles is kind. Behind that perfect Disney image was a young girl quietly drowning in insecurities, fighting anxiety, and finding comfort only in her secret world of books. Her favorite was Anya Seton's Catherine, a historical romance that gave her a sense of escape, a taste of the freedom she didn't have at that cold boarding school. As her teenage years rolled in, Hayley began to feel the first flutter of young love. Here's a surprise. She once had a short, innocent spark with none other than George Harrison of the Beatles. It was just a small connection. But wow, it shattered the idea that Disney's sweetheart was some untouchable angel. Beneath the spotlight was a real girl with real emotions, curiosity, and a growing sense of who she was becoming. Her world was full of contrasts. An artistic home bursting with creativity, a strict school that taught her boundaries the hard way, and the confusing emotions of first crushes. All of it shaped Hayley into someone delicate, yet tough, sweet, but strong. Then fate stepped in, and it happened almost by accident. At just 12 years old, Hayley landed her very first movie role in Tiger Bay, 1959, a British indie film. She thought she was just playing with Dad, since her father also starred in it, completely unaware that this little moment would rewrite her entire destiny. Her performance was raw and real. She was just a shy schoolgirl with a mischievous grin and big teeth. Yet when the camera rolled, her natural emotion lit up the screen. Critics were stunned. But the real magic twist? A copy of Tiger Bay somehow ended up in the hands of Walt Disney himself. And that changed everything. Exactly. When Walt Disney started searching for a fresh young face for his next big movie, Pollyanna, destiny was already calling Hayley's name. He sat down in his private screening room to watch Tiger Bay, and halfway through the film, he stopped, completely captivated. He turned to his casting team and said just one line that would change her life forever. "Find me that girl." Here's the funny part. Little Hayley had no idea who Walt Disney really was. In her memoir, she admits she didn't understand that Disney was more than just a name. It was a global empire. She didn't realize the man behind Mickey Mouse was a cultural legend, a powerhouse in Hollywood. To 12-year-old Hayley, he was just a kind, soft-spoken man with a thin mustache, nothing like the big, intimidating studio heads she'd imagined. Not long after, she got the invitation that would rewrite her story, a private meeting with Walt Disney himself at his hotel suite in London. And oh, what a scene that was. Hayley arrived with her parents, her brother, and even their tiny Pekingese dog, a gift from none other than Vivian Leigh and Laurence Olivier. But chaos struck fast. The poor pup kept peeing on the carpet, sending the whole family into a panic. Yet Disney just sat there smiling, completely unbothered, as if he already knew he'd found the perfect star for his film. Hayley later called it the most wonderful audition of her life, not because of glitz or fame, but because Walt made her and her family feel genuinely comfortable. He wasn't showing off his power, he was showing his heart. Before anything was official, Disney even wrote a heartfelt, handwritten letter to her mother, Mary Hayley Bell, personally thanking her for giving the world such a rare talent. What a moment. The Mills family held onto that handwritten letter for decades. A priceless keepsake of the moment that changed everything. That meeting in London wasn't just a business deal. It was destiny in motion. By the end of it, Walt Disney offered Hayley an exclusive 7-picture contract, instantly transforming a girl who'd split her childhood between a cozy Sussex farm and a strict boarding school into something new. Disney's golden daughter, the face of Pollyanna. Then came 1960, the year everything exploded. Pollyanna, a remake of the story once made famous by silent film star Mary Pickford, became an international hit beyond anyone's wildest dreams.
Because you're leading your life, and your life, kind of veers into areas sometimes that certain elements of the press find very interesting and feel that it's their right to investigate, and if I may use the word, pry.
Overnight, shy little Hayley Mills, barely 14, turned into America's most beloved sweetheart. People couldn't get enough of her sunshine smile and genuine innocence. She wasn't just acting, she was Pollyanna. Walt Disney himself was deeply involved, showing up on set more than he ever did for any other film. He'd stroll quietly among the crew, greeting everyone with warmth, and always take his spot behind the camera to watch Hayley perform. But here's what made him different. He never pushed her, never yelled or demanded perfection. Instead, he stood by her with a calm, fatherly energy, letting her know she was safe under his watch. That gentle protectiveness stayed with Hayley for life. Within that magical atmosphere, Pollyanna became more than a movie. It became a symbol of hope and kindness. Hayley's performance blew everyone away, earning her both the Academy Juvenile Award and a Golden Globe, making her one of the youngest stars ever recognized at the Oscars. Critics adored her, and the press couldn't stop talking about the Hayley Mills phenomenon. Gossip columnist Hedda Hopper even wrote that Walt had called her the finest talent to come into films in 25 years. But behind all the spotlight, Hayley was still the same shy girl from school. Even during the recording of America, Spread Your Golden Wings, one of the film's most touching moments, she froze up, too embarrassed to sing. Disney personally coached her, adjusting the set and soothing her nerves until she could sing with confidence. When Pollyanna finally premiered, it was pure magic. The movie shattered expectations, and Hayley's fame skyrocketed so fast that Disney Studios started receiving over 7,000 fan letters a week. She wasn't just a star, she was a phenomenon. Some fans went absolutely wild. One even mailed diamond rings, and another offered her an otter to keep in her bathtub. Can you imagine? But every time Hayley flew back home to England, The glitz disappeared in a flash. She still had to line up for plain boarding school meals, follow strict rules, and live just like any other student. No special treatment, no red carpets, just trays, uniforms, and discipline. That bizarre contrast made her Pollyanna fame feel almost dreamlike. America saw her as this shining Disney angel. Yet back home, she was just another girl trying to finish her homework. The character of Pollyanna, bright, hopeful, and endlessly kind, made Hayley the spiritual child of America. People adored her for embodying innocence in a time when the world craved optimism. And just like that, before she even hit 15, Hayley Mills was officially an A-list star. But Disney wasn't done testing her talent yet. The very next year, he threw her a challenge that was groundbreaking for the time, The Parent Trap, 1961. Hayley had to play two characters, the twins Susan and Sharon, with totally different personalities. The trick? Both appeared in the same scenes, talking, arguing, and pulling pranks, all shot with precision camera work that required near-perfect timing. And Hayley nailed it. She switched between the fiery, sarcastic Susan and the sweet, composed Sharon so flawlessly that audiences forgot there was only one actress behind both roles. The film turned into a massive box office success, one of Disney's top 3 family hits of the entire decade. It didn't just make Hayley a star, it made her a global icon for children's cinema. Even her cheerful tune, Let's Get Together, became a surprise hit, climbing all the way into the Billboard Top 10. Not bad for a 15-year-old who wasn't even chasing a singing career. What a moment of pure Disney magic. The Parent Trap sealed the deal. Hollywood had no choice but to admit it. Hayley Mills wasn't just Disney's favorite face. She was a full-blown powerhouse. At an age when most kids were worrying about schoolwork, Hayley was carrying entire blockbuster films on her shoulders and doing it with effortless charm. When she first signed that 7-picture contract, Disney knew they were holding a rare diamond, and with every movie, they polished her shine even brighter. They pushed her into new waters to test her range. Literally, In Search of the Castaways, 1962, Hayley dove into thrilling adventure scenes filled with storms and danger, proving she could handle action just as well as emotion. Then came Summer Magic, 1963, where Disney let her step into a softer, more mature light, showing glimpses of the woman she was becoming. And by that darn cat, 1965, she was back in her playful groove, full of mischief and spark. 3 films, 3 totally different vibes, and Hayley nailed every single one of them. She wasn't just a child star anymore. She was Disney's golden girl. But the magic of childhood doesn't last forever. Hayley was growing up. Her face, her body, her feelings, everything was changing. Yet the audience didn't want her to change at all. They wanted the same sweet, innocent girl from Pollyanna, frozen in time. Disney had created an image so pure that it left no space for the real Hayley to breathe. On screen, she had to keep smiling, keep playing the cheerful girl next door. Off screen, though, she was a young woman wrestling with her own emotions. Curiosity, confusion, and quiet dreams she couldn't express. She began asking herself, who am I, really? It became a silent battle. The adored image that millions loved versus the real person hidden underneath. And this struggle played out so quietly that most people never saw it happening. And right in the middle of her inner struggle, Hayley Mills's career hit its brightest flame. Her success didn't explode and fade like a spark. It burned long and strong, stretching across the first half of the 1960s.
I was totally in love with Elvis. Mm-hmm. And I spent a long time writing a letter to Elvis and never heard anything.
Never?
From 1960 to 1965, Hayley wasn't just another child star. She was the heartbeat of Hollywood. The entire Disney brand seemed to revolve around her face, her smile, her innocence. Those were her golden years. From 14 to 18, she became everywhere. Fan letters flooded in by the thousands every single week. Every film she touched turned into a hit. Kids adored her, parents trusted her image, and the world couldn't get enough of that classic Disney girl next door. Hayley Mills wasn't just acting in family films. She defined what they were supposed to feel like. She became a cultural symbol of warmth and purity in a world desperate for comfort. But just as her fame reached its highest peak, Hayley made a move that stunned everyone. She decided to grow up, even though Hollywood wasn't ready to let her. After that long Disney chapter, she took on a new challenge with The Family Way, 1966, a movie that broke every expectation people had of her. This wasn't Pollyanna anymore, and it definitely wasn't the playful twin from The Parent Trap. In this film, Hayley stepped into adulthood, portraying raw emotions, real struggles, and even intimate vulnerability. It was bold, it was risky, and it made headlines. The public was shocked. The press couldn't stop talking. But the critics saw something deeper. They saw the transformation of a girl once adored by millions into a serious actress. From that point on, Hayley's journey quieted down. Not because she faded, but because she was finally walking her own path, no longer chasing the sparkle of childhood fame. But Hayley's story didn't fade. It simply evolved, slow and steady. Her fame matured into something solid, enduring, and deeply respected. She gracefully transitioned through television, indie films, and stage productions with the same focus and dedication that had marked her childhood success. Everyone who worked with her said the same thing. She was punctual, disciplined, humble, and never difficult. She grew up under those bright stage lights, and she never once turned her back on them. Her long journey found its beautiful full-circle moment in the year 2000, when Disney honored her with the Disney Legends Award. It was a poetic ending, from the little girl Walt himself had pointed out with the words, "Find me that girl," to the grown woman celebrated as a true Disney legend. The same studio that once shaped her childhood dreams now stood to applaud the woman she'd become, confident, classy, and timeless. But here's the thing. Hayley never really vanished from Hollywood. She just learned how to stand in the light differently. No longer the smiling child who made history, she became a calm, grounded artist. One who showed the world that early fame might come by luck, but a real career takes a lifetime to build. She didn't chase the spotlight anymore. She simply let her talent speak for itself. And yet, behind the grace and professionalism, another side of her life was beginning to unfold. One filled with emotion, complexity, and yes, controversy. It all began in 1966, when Hayley stepped onto the set of The Family Way at just 20 years old. That's when she fell in love, and everything started to change. Even then, to the public, she was still Disney's eternal sweetheart, the cheerful Pollyanna, the playful Sharon and Susan from The Parent Trap, the pure-hearted girl the world refused to see as grown. But off-screen, Hayley was already a woman stepping into a love story that would shake her image forever. Behind that shiny image was a young woman trying to figure out adulthood in real time, and that's when Roy Bolting stepped into the frame. He was 53, 33 years older than Hayley, and a heavyweight of British cinema, one half of the Bolting brothers behind Brighton Rock, 1947, Private's Progress, I'm All Right, Jack with Peter Sellers, and later The Last Word, 1979. He'd seen war, fame, 3 marriages, and a maze of complicated romances, the kind of history that made the British press both respect him and handle him with caution. Even when he passed at 87 in Oxfordshire, papers still used the same line, a brilliant but controversial filmmaker. And one of those controversies lit up in 1966, when news broke across Britain that Roy Bolting and Hayley Mills were in a relationship. It wasn't just gossip. It hit like a cultural jolt, because the 33-year age gap felt huge to the public, and it clashed hard with the protected image they'd held for Hayley. People were shaken. Some felt like a piece of their own childhood got flipped on its head, as if Pollyanna herself had stepped into a grown-up story with a man old enough to be her father, or even her grandfather, as newspapers put it. Headlines called it an unequal romance, questioning where the line sits between power, experience, and a young woman just entering her 20s. And editorials worried Hayley was losing the purity audiences cherished. Fans reacted, too. Some even mailed protest letters to Disney saying they felt let down, while a smaller but steady group pushed back, arguing that Hayley was an adult with the right to make her own choices, no permission slip required. The debate wasn't simple. It was layered, emotional, and it showed how tightly the public had gripped the idea of who she was supposed to be. There were people who stood by Hayley, loyal fans and friends who truly believed she had every right to live her life as a grown woman. To them, her private choices shouldn't be dictated by a Hollywood fantasy built around the idea of eternal innocence. They didn't see her relationship with Roy bolting as scandalous. They saw it as a connection between two creative souls who met at just the right time. Inside Hayley's private world, the story was far less dramatic than the headlines made it seem. She loved Roy for his intellect, depth, and emotional warmth. He made her feel understood, something she had never truly experienced while growing up under the glare of childhood fame. For once, she wasn't the Disney girl or the perfect daughter. She was simply herself, seen and valued by someone who got her. Roy spoke openly about their relationship years later in a 1998 interview. He said their bond existed on a level deeper than personality, and admitted that Hayley made him feel vulnerable in a way few people ever had. Age, he said, was never a barrier to love. But that very age gap did make him hesitate at first. He was cautious, aware of how it looked to the world. Yet when Hayley confided that she wanted children, he realized their connection had become something real, something lasting. After 5 years of living together, the two finally married, Hayley becoming Roy's fourth wife out of 5. Their wedding was quiet and intimate, almost the opposite of the media storm surrounding them. But once the news broke, the British press lost its mind. Serious papers and tabloids alike plastered their photos side by side, the radiant Disney princess with Pollyanna's innocent eyes, and the older film director, seasoned, sharp, and visibly from another generation. It was a collision of two worlds, youth and experience, idealism and realism, and everyone had an opinion about it. When the Los Angeles Times later looked back on Roy Bolting's life, it pointed out how his marriage to Hayley Mills was seen as a story that made the public both fascinated and deeply uneasy. People called their union a cultural shock, not because they doubted the love, but because the sight of Britain's cherished Pollyanna marrying a man 3 decades her senior felt like watching innocence step straight into a world that seemed far too old, too weathered, too soon. But for Hayley, this wasn't rebellion, and it wasn't about escaping her Disney image. It was something more powerful. It was freedom.
It's another life. It's another life. In a way, it's another person. It's the same person.
For once, she was making a life choice that belonged entirely to her. No studios, no public image, no managers, just a young woman following what she believed was real love, despite the whispers and judgment closing in around her. One of the few surviving photos from that wedding tells the story better than words. Hayley's soft smile, her eyes calm but uncertain, while Roy holds her hand tightly, almost protectively. That moment said everything. It wasn't just an older man guarding his young wife. It was two people silently acknowledging that the path ahead would be rough. They both knew the world was watching, half skeptical, half intrigued, ready to dissect every move they made. Once the door to marriage closed behind them, though, an entirely different world opened up. Away from the flashing headlines and the noise of London society, Hayley and Roy built their own quiet corner of peace. Their Chelsea apartment became a hub for writers, painters, and free-thinking creatives, a little hideaway filled with laughter, ideas, and conversation. For the first time, Hayley felt like she wasn't being looked at as a former Disney star, but as a woman, mature, thoughtful, and independent. And when the city's chaos grew too loud, they'd escape to their countryside retreat, an old windmill in Buckinghamshire, perched on a misty hill. It was their sanctuary. They kept cats, surrounded themselves with books, and hosted friends who'd drop by to talk art and cinema until the early hours. In the evenings, they'd sit by the fire, sipping wine and trading stories about theater and film, their laughter echoing through the stone walls. And in the mornings, they'd walk hand in hand through the quiet mist of the Chiltern Hills, taking slow, peaceful steps. For Hayley, it felt, maybe for the first time, like she had finally stepped into her own life. She finally felt like she was living for real, not playing a part, not under blinding lights, just a young woman learning to breathe on her own terms. But inside that calm, picture-perfect setup, tiny cracks started to show. Easy to miss at first, yet clearly warning that their differences were about to speak louder than love. What once felt dreamy began to shift, slow and steady. Roy was cool-headed and seasoned, but set in his ways. Comfortable, careful, and a little locked into routine. Hayley was the flip side. Young, curious, hungry to push herself and see the world. After years of being boxed in as a child star, she wanted movement, change, challenge. While he was easing his pace and settling in, they were living on two different tempos, like two songs that wouldn't sync. He slowed down. She needed to speed up. The same differences that drew them together now started pulling them apart, inch by inch. By 1977, they ended it quietly. No fireworks, no dramatic showdown, just two people admitting that even the strongest feelings can't always bridge the gap created by years and outlooks. Still, through every crack, one bright truth held them together forever. Crispian Mills, born in 1973, he was the heartbeat of a love story that was complicated, real, and deeply felt. Their marriage might have ended, but that bond didn't break. It transformed, leaving them tied by something bigger than headlines or judgment. In that little boy, folks swore they could see two bloodlines twisting together. Hayley's artistic spark, innocence, and sharp intuition mixing with Roy's quiet intellect and reflective vibe. He grew up straddling two zones, the buzzing Chelsea flat and the serene Buckinghamshire windmill, soaking up both worlds and pouring all that energy into music that would later flip the scene on its head. 2 decades on, Crispian Mills broke out in the 90s with Kula Shaker, swerving hard from the Oasis/Blur lane and cooking up psychedelic rock laced with Indian influences, sitar textures, mantra vibes, and rich Eastern color. That fearless blend made him one of the most recognizable voices of the Britpop era, standing out with style that felt ancient and brand new at the same time. For Hayley, her son's rise was never about the glow of famous parents. She believed he climbed on pure talent and grit, no cosigns needed. Whenever she spoke about Crispian, there was this calm, unmistakable pride. Nothing flashy, no hype, just a real respect for a young man who carved his own lane the hard way, on merit and steady work. After her marriage to Roy Bolting ended, Hayley stepped into what she once called the quiet void after an earthquake. A hush that didn't harden her, but clarified her needs. She wanted a partner who'd walk beside her, not lead, not control. And she said it with her actions, not just words. Through long West End nights and those heavy backstage moments where she had to center herself and believe her career still had legs, she kept moving with purpose, trusting that the right kind of love would match her pace, not clip her wings. Hayley crossed paths with actor-director Lee Lawson, and this time there was no media circus, no shock headlines, just two artists clicking in a low-key, grown-up way. He wasn't a giant like Roy or some headline magnate, but he made Hayley feel seen, and that meant everything. They came together quietly, moving like people who'd already paid their dues and weren't chasing fame at any cost anymore. Lee was younger and tuned in emotionally, and he looked at Hayley not as the Disney image, but as a woman breaking free from a shadow the world had thrown over her for years. After standing beside an older, stricter, more traditional partner, she found with Lee a better balance, a love light enough not to cage her, but deep enough to help her heal and breathe again. In 1976, Hayley welcomed her second son, Jason Lawson, right when life was testing her from every angle, rebuilding a career, recovering from losing most of her earnings to taxes, and patching up quiet scars from those Disney years that never fully faded. She was also fighting to be the kind of mother she had once wished she'd had, steady, present, and soft where it counted. Jason felt like a gift, a reset button that told her where her real life lived, right there in her arms, no studio needed. But reality still walked in, honest and unblinking. Both Hayley and Lee were working artists, always on the move, Juggling film contracts, tours, and roles that ate up time and energy, their schedules kept pulling them in different directions, asking more than either could give to the other, even with the best intentions. Lee became a loving stepfather to Crispian, and for Hayley, that meant more than anything. She cherished the way he cared for her son. It spoke volumes about the kind of man he was. But even with all that warmth and good intent, love alone couldn't hold together two lives moving in opposite directions. There were no fights, no betrayal, no ugly headlines, just a quiet truth that stings every now and then. Sometimes love is real, but it's still not enough to make forever work. By the late 1970s, Hayley and Lee made the calm, mutual decision to part ways. It wasn't bitter, just bittersweet, a soft ending to a meaningful chapter. Hayley would later speak about that time with a steady fondness, remembering Lee with affection for the peace and grounding he brought into her whirlwind life. He went his way, she went hers, and for her, that meant going back to being both a devoted mother and a working actress, still standing strong after decades in the spotlight. That stretch of her life with Lee remained one of the gentlest memories she carried, a quiet pause in a story that had been racing since she was 14. After saying goodbye to Lee Lawson, Hayley entered a new, more centered stage of her journey. She had weathered a public marriage that shook the media, a tender but fragile romance, and years spent juggling her children and career. She was done chasing big, dramatic love stories. What she wanted now was stability, something calm, respectful, and real. And that's exactly when Feroz Abbas Khan came into the picture, an Indian actor, playwright, and director with a grounded presence that instantly drew her in. They met while working together on a stage production in the late 1990s, and what caught Hayley's heart wasn't his age. She was 20 years older, but his stillness, his honesty, and the genuine respect he showed her, not as the Disney girl, but as a serious artist, still growing, still chasing life on her own terms. Their connection unfolded so naturally it almost felt inevitable. No drama, no noise, no shock headlines like with Roy Bolting, and no frantic schedules pulling them apart like with Lee Lawson. Feroz Abbas Khan walked into Hayley's life right when she needed someone who could do the rarest thing, listen and stay. He didn't try to steer her or control her. He simply stood beside her, giving her room to breathe and exist as her own person. Since 1997, they've stayed together, steady, low-key, and unshakable. No marriage certificates, no flashy ceremonies, no photo spreads in glossy magazines. They chose the kind of privacy that most people only dream about. Two grown souls who knew that love doesn't need an audience. After years of chaos, heartbreak, and constant motion, Feroz brought Hayley something priceless: peace. For once, she didn't have to prove herself or protect an image. She could just be. And then came 2008, her 62nd birthday, the day everything stopped cold. Hayley got the phone call nobody ever wants to hear. She had breast cancer in both breasts. She later said the first thing she felt wasn't panic, but a strange stillness, like her whole body had paused mid-breath. This woman who had survived fame, money loss, heartbreak, and endless reinvention now faced her toughest fight yet, the silent, invisible kind. She went into surgery right away, and though it went smoothly, the doctors told her the battle wasn't over. Chemotherapy was next. Hayley later described that period bluntly. I had never felt so weak. The treatments tore through her strength. She lost her hair, her energy, her appetite, and sometimes even the will to get out of bed. There were nights she lay awake in agony, certain she might not see the morning. But through it all, Feroz never left. He became her anchor, her calm in the storm, the one constant presence reminding her she wasn't fighting alone. At her lowest, when she felt her body and spirit collapsing, his steady support became the difference between despair and hope. And when Hayley reached the point where she thought she couldn't bear another day, something inside her shifted. The quiet strength she'd been building her whole life began to rise again. At one point, Hayley made a choice that left her doctors deeply worried. She decided to stop chemotherapy. She said she couldn't keep trading away her dignity and quality of life just to stretch out the days. It wasn't that she wanted to give up. She just wanted to take back control. So she turned toward alternative treatments, a mix of medical care, natural therapies, and emotional healing. It was a risky move, but Hayley felt she had to steer her own fight rather than be dragged through endless hospital routines that made her feel like a patient instead of a person. And here's the incredible part. Even though she didn't finish the full chemo regimen, her body began to respond. With a combination of complementary medicine, careful monitoring, and fierce determination, she slowly started to recover.
This man's house, played by Barry Bostwick, who's very funny and very tall. Very good looking.
By 2012, Hayley finally heard the words she had prayed for. No sign of cancer. It was a quiet victory, no flashing cameras, no red carpets, and just Hayley, Feroz Abbas Khan, and her loved ones quietly celebrating a triumph that cost her every ounce of strength she had. That battle took as much from her as any scandal or heartbreak she had ever endured. But it also gave her something back. Clarity. Cancer didn't just change how she looked at her health. It completely reshaped how she saw her life. She later admitted her biggest regret wasn't about the risky choices or public controversies. It was that she hadn't spent enough time with her kids during those long filming years. In an unexpected way, that fight for her life forced her to stop, truly stop, for the first time in more than 50 years. It slowed her rhythm, quieted her chaos, and taught her to value every single sunrise. She was still here, still alive, still living, but now with purpose that ran deeper than fame or survival. And while cancer had been brutal, it wasn't the first storm powerful enough to shake her world. Long before that, Hayley had faced another kind of devastation, one that struck not her body, but the very foundation of her youth. A financial tragedy that almost erased everything she had worked for since her Disney days. While the world pictured Disney's golden girl living a dream life, the truth behind the scenes was nothing like the fairy tale. Most people didn't know that every penny Hayley earned during her Disney prime had been locked away in a trust fund, supposedly her golden ticket to freedom when she turned 1821 factorial. Everyone said it would be the big payoff, the reward she'd earned after working nonstop since she was just 12 years old. But the reality behind that trust was a ticking time bomb. Her father, Sir John Mills, had handled all her finances during her childhood, putting her earnings into what looked like safe, smart investments, only for many of them to collapse. Some business deals bled money, and debts were even taken out in Hayley's name without her knowing. She had no idea that her secure future was already tangled in financial trouble. As the years passed, she stayed focused on her acting, never realizing how messy the situation had become. Then came the moment everyone had talked about, her 21st birthday, the day she was finally supposed to unlock the fortune she'd worked so hard for. But when she opened the trust, her excitement turned into pure disbelief. Her lawyer broke the news. The UK tax office had hit her fund with a 91% tax rate, leaving her with almost nothing. Hayley was stunned. Everything she'd earned, all those films, all that fame, had evaporated overnight. Her lawyer even warned that if she wanted to keep any of it, she'd have to leave England altogether. The explanation was cold and bureaucratic. The country was still recovering from World War II, and heavy taxes on high earners were part of the rebuilding effort. But to Hayley, it felt like punishment, a cruel twist delivered right as she was stepping into adulthood. Imagine it, working your whole childhood under studio lights only to realize that the dream everyone envied had left you with nothing but a broken promise and a harsh lesson about how the world really works. When people urged Hayley to sue her father or lawyer for mismanaging her trust, she flat out refused. She said her family had protected her since childhood, and she could never repay that love by dragging them through a courtroom. But while she was trying to hold on to her principles, another financial disaster hit hard. Her former manager was accused of misconduct, and this time, Hayley had no choice but to fight back legally. The lawsuit stretched on for years, and the legal fees piled up faster than she could earn. Her savings vanished, and the situation pushed her to accept roles she didn't even like, parts she admitted later she only took because she needed the paycheck to survive. Each time she stepped in front of the camera, she carried more than a script. She carried the weight of a childhood built on other people's choices, the shadow of a dream that had turned into debt. Then came the legal war with the British government, a grueling 6-year battle over the taxes that had wiped her out. The first appeal, lost. The second appeal, 3 years later, lost again. Every setback felt like another door slamming shut. It wasn't until 1972, when her case finally reached Lord Denning, that Hayley saw her first flicker of justice. Denning ruled in her favor, declaring she had already paid her taxes and that the trust fund was rightfully hers. For a moment, it looked like she'd finally won back what was taken, but the celebration didn't last long. In 1974, the House of Lords overturned the ruling, erasing the victory and taxing the entire fund back down to zero. Hayley had officially lost roughly £2 million, the equivalent of nearly $17 million today. Not because she was reckless, not because she mismanaged her money, but because the system itself had swallowed her childhood fortune whole, compounded by mistakes made by the very people she trusted most. When asked about that devastating loss years later, Hayley summed it up in one simple, haunting sentence. It was all gone before I even had a chance to touch it. The government stole my trust like pirates. That was how Hayley Mills summed up the ordeal that had cost her everything she earned as a child. What hurt her the most wasn't losing the money. It was losing her freedom, the independence she'd been promised since the day she first stepped onto a Disney set. Her son, Crispian Mills, once said something that stayed with her for life. You can't grieve something you never truly possessed. That truth clung to Hayley's heart for years. The whole tax case became like an invisible scar, bloodless but deep. It taught her a lesson so painful and so expensive that no one would ever wish to learn it the same way. But as if losing her entire fortune wasn't enough, fate still had another cruel twist waiting for her, one that struck at her spirit, not her bank account. Back in 1961, when Hayley won the Juvenile Academy Award for her dazzling role in Pollyanna, she couldn't even attend the ceremony. She was still in boarding school, and her parents wanted to keep her life normal. So Annette Funicello, another Disney star, accepted the Oscar on her behalf. The miniature golden statue was later shipped to England and placed proudly in the Mills family home. Not just as a trophy, but as a shining reminder of the moment when America had seen her as its Disney miracle. That tiny statue meant more than gold. It represented her childhood, her effort, her identity, a rare honor only a handful of young performers had ever received. But sometime in the 1980s, while Hayley was in the U.S. filming Good Morning, Miss Bliss, the show that later evolved into Saved by the Bell, tragedy struck again. When she returned to her home in England, she discovered the Oscar was gone. No broken doors, no smashed windows, no sign of forced entry. It had simply vanished. Hayley tore the house apart, searching for it. She checked every corner, every drawer, every box. She called everyone who had ever visited, every storage place, every contact who might have known anything, but the little golden statue never resurfaced. That disappearance hit her like another kind of loss entirely. Not financial, but emotional, like a piece of her youth had been quietly erased. To this day, the missing Oscar remains one of Hollywood's quiet mysteries. And for Hayley, it became a symbol of how fragile even the brightest moments of fame can be. No one had literally stolen Hayley's childhood, but someone had taken away the most beautiful symbol of it, the heartbreaking twist. Her juvenile Oscar was one of a kind. After Hayley received hers in 1961, the Academy decided to discontinue the award and destroy the mold. That meant no identical version could ever exist again. What vanished from her home wasn't just a trophy. It was the only physical proof of a once-in-a-lifetime honor that no one else could replace. Hayley would often say she didn't miss the medal, she missed the meaning. That tiny golden figure had represented the moment when the world first believed in her, when little Pollyanna had captured hearts across continents. Losing it didn't make her poorer, but it made her feel as though a piece of her younger self, the innocent girl who had lit up Disney's golden era, had been locked away forever, somewhere she could never reach. Then, in 2022, something beautiful finally happened. Over 6 decades after she'd first won it, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences made things right. They presented Hayley with a replacement statue, hand-delivered by the Academy's president himself. When Hayley smiled for the cameras, it wasn't just gratitude. There was a quiet relief behind her eyes, the look of someone reclaiming a piece of herself that had been missing for far too long. It wasn't about the gold or the glory. It was about closure. Hollywood had finally stitched back a small fragment of her childhood that fate had torn away. But while all of that unfolded, the financial chaos, the stolen Oscar, the endless emotional storms, Hayley was battling another far quieter enemy. One no one in her family, or even in Hollywood, knew about. Bulimia crept into her life silently, and not through the usual showbiz pressure to stay thin. It began from something that sounded almost silly. A casual comment from a famous jockey who once told her that riders sometimes ate grass to make themselves vomit and keep their weight down. What started as an offhand remark would soon twist into one of the darkest, most personal battles of Hayley Mills's life. Hayley was still just a kid, told non-stop to keep that perfect image for the camera. And curiosity caught her slipping into something dangerous. She tried the trick, and it turned into a trap fast. No one knew, not her friends, not her family, not even Walt Disney, because she hid it so well that people living with her every day couldn't spot a thing. What started like a harmless experiment snowballed into a secret addiction, and her body paid the price hard. She got so thin she looked breakable. Her menstrual cycle stopped, and her skin flared with painful acne. Antibiotics became routine just to keep up the face the industry expected. The scariest part?
Life exactly how it was back then. So that was really fascinating.
In the late 1960s, the word bulimia wasn't even common. Not with doctors, not with specialists, not in any treatment system. Inside her head, it was simple. I'm doing what I need to do so I can keep acting. No one saw the despair tucked behind Disney's brightest smile because the show had to go on, and she'd been trained to make it look easy. It wasn't until much later, when her body started fighting back and motherhood made her look in the mirror for real, that Hayley began climbing out of that spiral step by step. She didn't snap out of it overnight, and she didn't have a handbook. She just chose herself and kept choosing, even when it was messy. As Hollywood slowly opened up about mental health, eating disorders, and the damage child stars can carry, Hayley finally had the words for what she'd lived through. This wasn't a bad habit. It was an illness that needed care and compassion, not shame. She hopes her story reaches young people under bright lights and heavy timelines, reminding them that even the most polished faces on screen might be fighting invisible battles, and that getting help is real strength, not weakness. And you don't have to fight alone. That realization became Hayley's turning point. It transformed her from just another face of fame into a living witness to the pain that hides beneath Hollywood's glitter. She turned her scars into a message, becoming a voice that helped the world see its stars not as untouchable icons, but as humans with hearts that bruise and heal just like anyone else. Hayley Mills's true legacy doesn't begin with golden statues, box office numbers. It begins with truth. She became a mirror reflecting an era when Hollywood didn't yet know how to protect its children. In the 1960s, Hayley embodied the spirit of innocence, that bright, honest light Walt Disney used to define family films for an entire generation. Pollyanna, The Parent Trap, In Search of the Castaways. Those weren't just hit movies. They were cultural cornerstones built on optimism, kindness, and faith in goodness, even as the real world behind the cameras was far more complicated. But what makes Hayley unforgettable isn't the sparkle on screen. It's the private journey behind it. Her story, marked by beauty, pain, and resilience, turned her into something deeper than a star, a symbol of endurance. After losing every penny she earned as a child to an outdated tax system and misguided trust, Hayley didn't stay silent. She became one of the first public voices demanding financial protection for child actors, shining a light on the system's failures. Her memoir, Forever Young, pushed both British and American media to look closer. And that pressure helped spark real conversations about reforming entertainment laws to protect minors from the same fate she endured. And she didn't stop there. Hayley later became a strong voice for mental health in acting, opening up about her private battle with bulimia long before it was safe or popular to do so. At a time when the word itself was barely spoken in Britain, she broke the silence, giving other performers permission to tell their stories, too. Hayley Mills's legacy isn't about nostalgia. It's about courage, the courage to grow up in the spotlight and still come out honest, wiser, and unbroken. When Hayley said, "I didn't even know the word bulimia existed," that single line rippled across generations. Her honesty helped thousands of young women finally face their own silent struggles, realizing they weren't alone. It turned her pain into purpose, giving hope to people who'd been hiding behind their own bright smiles. To filmmakers, Hayley is remembered as a true professional, punctual, humble, and never the diva type. She always thanked every crew member, remembered names, and treated everyone with respect, no matter their role. Colleagues still talk about her warmth decades later, calling her the rare light that made a tough industry feel human. That kind of grace sticks with people. To audiences, Hayley isn't just a movie star. She's a piece of their childhood. The laugh that echoed through The Parent Trap, the sparkle of those clear, curious eyes in Pollyanna, the brave spirit that refused to crumble even when life got rough. She's a living reminder that sometimes the brightest light comes from the most fragile places. And to young artists, Hayley stands as quiet proof that early fame isn't a curse if you learn to guard your heart from the noise. She showed that survival in this business isn't about outshining others. It's about holding on to your humanity while the world tries to script your life for you. Wherever she stood, in Disney's golden films, on the theater stage, or in the camera's glow later in life, Hayley Mills has carried one message with her through it all. Kindness and endurance travel farther than any spotlight. Her real legacy isn't the list of roles she played. It's the soft, steady strength she left behind in the people who watched her grow, fall, and rise again. Those who grew up with her, and the generations discovering her now, still see a bit of themselves in the light she carried so effortlessly. Now, as she nears 80, Hayley hasn't stepped away from the arts. She's simply chosen to move through them at her own rhythm. After the Disney years, she kept working with steady determination. Films, TV, West End theater, and even indie projects that introduced her to younger streaming-age audiences. In recent years, she's stayed active, appearing in the series Pitching In, 2019, joining new productions like Arthur's Whiskey, and returning to the stage every now and then. Sometimes she even performs alongside her sister, Juliet Mills, rekindling the same family spark that shaped her all those years ago. Hayley Mills is living proof that true stars don't fade. They just shine slower, warmer, and deeper with time. Since the release of her memoir, Forever Young, in 2021, Hayley Mills has become one of the strongest voices fighting for the mental health and protection of child actors. She openly revisits the most painful parts of her story, her struggle with bulimia, her stolen Oscar, the financial nightmare that took her childhood earnings, and her long fight with cancer. But she doesn't tell these stories for sympathy. She tells them as warnings, shining a light on the real cost of growing up inside the spotlight. These days, Hayley's world spins around what matters most, family. She spends her time surrounded by her 2 sons, 5 grandchildren, and the partner who stood by her through her darkest battle with cancer. She's not in every headline like she used to be, but her presence still lingers. At Disney reunions, in interviews about cinema's golden years, and most importantly, in the hearts of fans who see her as a symbol of resilience, innocence, and strength. If you only remember Pollyanna or The Parent Trap, you might think of that bright smile and those hopeful eyes. But behind that glow was a life full of challenges. Losing the equivalent of $17 million before she ever touched it, fighting an eating disorder in secret, enduring a scandalous marriage that made global headlines, losing her Oscar, and later, surviving cancer. Through it all, Hayley never let bitterness take root. Instead, she walked through each storm with quiet grace, not pretending the pain wasn't real, but refusing to let it define her. Every heartbreak, every mistake, every loss became something she learned from. A reason to understand herself more deeply and to connect with others through compassion rather than regret. Today, Hayley lives gently, away from the constant noise of fame. But make no mistake, her life is far from small. She's proof that even a person raised in the machine of celebrity can still find peace and balance if they're brave enough to face their wounds, learn from them, and let time do its healing. In the long journey of light and shadow that is Hayley Mills' life, one question remains. What stays with you the most? Is it Pollyanna's radiant smile, the mischievous spark from the parent trap, or the strength of a woman who endured loss, illness, and heartbreak, yet still chose hope?
Share your thoughts in the comments below.
If you felt inspired by Hayley's story, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that even in the toughest moments, light can still shine through.